Welcome back everyone, I'm Val and in today's video I'm going to give you all my tips and tricks to travel on a budget. So stay tuned because in this video you'll learn that you don't need to travel expensive and that traveling on a budget is actually easier than you think. So let's get to it. So let's start with why traveling on a budget is easier than you think. Actually, people think that with travel expenses, transportation, planes, accommodation, traveling has to be expensive. But to be honest, it doesn't have to be. Saving money while you travel by doing small changes like taking a bus instead of a plane is actually the best and easiest way to just start traveling affordably. You also don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of money in luxury hotels or expensive accommodation because there are plenty of affordable accommodation options out there. So let's get started with the first tip: how to find cheap flights. It is one of the biggest questions all travelers ask, like how do I find the cheapest flights to get to my destination? You've heard things as waking up at 3 a.m. and doing research to get the cheapest flights in the morning, but to be honest, that doesn't work like that anymore. So I basically use one web page that is Skyscanner to look for all my flights. And the reason why I use this particular platform is because every time that I compare prices with other platforms, Skyscanner always gives me the cheapest one. You can find a link in the description of this video to all the websites I use for traveling, including this one. Now, there are some things that I actually do when doing my research for planes, so I get the cheapest price. First, remember that flying during the week is going to be cheaper than during the weekend. But that's a general thing, because for example, in holiday destinations, like let's say Thailand or the Maldives or places with a beach, traveling during the weekend will actually be more expensive than during the week. But when you go for business destinations, it's going to be actually the opposite. So flexibility in your traveling days could also be the key to saving a few pennies when booking your flight. I also always make sure to do my research in the incognito window in Google, because we all accept cookies when we do research on the internet. That means that the web browser is going to know that you are looking for flights from a particular destination to another, and if you don't buy the flight when you're doing the research, the prices might go up the next time you look for it.
Noted.
Now, sometimes when I do the research in this website and then after seeing the cheapest airline, I do the research directly in the airline, I actually find some discounts by buying the ticket directly in the airline. So you can also try things like that. Now, point number 2, let's talk about accommodation. There are many ways you can find affordable accommodation when you travel. One of the most common ones, just staying in hostels. Actually, staying in a shared accommodation rather than a private one is generally going to be cheaper. And to be honest, when you're traveling, you're going to spend most of the day outside enjoying the place you're at than back at your accommodation. So if it has a clean bathroom and a bed, this doesn't mean that you cannot stay in luxury hotels from time to time if it's part of the experience of a certain country. For example, things like the Ice Hotel in some of the Nordic countries, the hotel in itself is experience. So spending a night there could also be part of your traveling plan. The important thing here is that most of your accommodation is booked on a budget. That will help you save so you can spend it on other experiences that don't involve sleeping. Another way of doing this is something that I used to do when I was traveling in Europe, and it was doing volunteers. Volunteering around is actually a very good way of connecting with locals and saving in accommodation and in many times food. I have an entire video about that, but basically I use an app to look for volunteering opportunities, and you offer some sort of labor or part-time work for the accommodation and the food. And finally, I also use an app that is called Couchsurfing, which basically allows you to stay with locals in exchange of sharing some of your culture and spending time with the hosts at a particular place. They will let you stay on their couch and basically share what they know about the city, and you can also share about your own culture or anything you want with them. Before you panic, yes, I do that as a solo female traveler, and mostly I try to find female hosts for this so I feel safe. So well. Also, couchsurfing is based on references, so make sure to look for a host that has very good reviews from other travelers. And if you're a female and a solo female traveler like myself, then look for a host that has a lot of female reviews. We do this on a budget, but always safely. Number 3, how to save money in food. And actually the answer is easier than you think, just eat like a local. Thailand is the perfect example of this, because in cities like Bangkok and Chiang Mai you can find a lot of restaurants with a lot of cuisines. But keep in mind that Western food is always going to be more expensive than Asian, especially Thai food. And even Thai food in some places that are directed to foreigners is more expensive than the local Thai food. So this happens all around the world. So in order to save money in food, look for the places where the local people go to have regular meals. You will find out that the prices are cheaper than even some popular or fancy restaurants you may find in that place. To find this, you can do Google research or actually join some local or expat groups where you can ask for recommendations in local food or the cheapest food they can find around one particular place. Now let's talk about transportation. I already told you how to save money by booking cheap flights, but what about the rest of the transportation? And to be honest, in places like Europe or even some parts of Southeast Asia, traveling around by land is cheaper than by plane. So my first tip is, if you can reach your destination by bus or train, compare the prices to the flight, and most likely the bus or the train will be cheaper than the flight. So go for the land transportation. In Europe, you can find apps like Flixbus or even a sharing ride like BlaBlaCar to take you to different places. Also, you can book in the official website of the train lines in all European countries, and they can take you from one city to another or even from one country to another. Here in Asia, I use the app Want2Go to book buses, ferries, and land transportation. And for example, in Thailand, the train line also has an official website, and I book the trains in there. And my second tip is transportation inside the city or the place. Using public transport rather than private will save you a ton of money when you're traveling around a city or a town. So just go on metro, bus, or any public transport you may find in that particular city. The big capitals in the world are generally well connected, so you will find many means of public transport that can save you from taking a taxi, which is very expensive. Here in Asia, you will also find motorcycles that are cheaper than taking a cab. My next tip is how to find low-cost activities. In the link is in my description. You can also find 2 websites where you can look for affordable activities or even free walking tours, which is one great way to see a city by spending zero on it. You can also compare prices in different places when you really need to book a tour for a certain experience, or the best way is actually finding a local travel agency or tourist agency that will offer the tour. The key point here is doing a research and comparing prices, because here in Thailand, for example, there are tours that are cheaper when you book them with the locals right in the place than when you book them on the internet. But there are also places where the opposite happens. So just compare prices, do your research, and wait until you reach your destination to check if there are local agencies that will offer the tour or the experience you want to go to, and just compare. You can also join activities with local like rock climbings or hikings to explore some places with other people. For this, you can join Facebook groups or use apps like Meetup, or even Couchsurfing has an event part where you can just look for activities in the city you're at that you can share with other locals or visitors of the area. My next tip has to do with tracking. The best way to save money is actually tracking how much you're spending and how much you intend to save. And this applies not only for traveling but for any lifestyle.
Okay, boring.
As you know, I travel full-time, but before I started traveling, I did have the habit of tracking all my monthly expenses, savings, and salary, which is a habit that just moved to the traveling area. So you can do an approximate budget for your monthly expenses, or when you're planning your next trip, you can do a budget for that particular country or that particular trip. It is also good advice to book accommodation and transportation beforehand, so you at least will have 2 of the biggest parts of the trip already tracked and your expenses already checked. If sending a monthly budget is too complicated, you can set a daily budget or track your daily expenses. There are tons of apps for this, and even Google has templates for tracking expenses. So there are many ways you can do this if you are a spreadsheet type of person or a everything in my phone type of person. There are several ways you can do this. Next tip is packing smart, which is something I talk about a lot in this channel because many people think that it's not possible to travel light, especially when you're making long trips or traveling full-time like myself. But let me tell you, it is. It is very possible to travel around with a carry-on. I've been living with a carry-on for 3 years already, and it is very possible. I do have an entire video on how to pack and tips to pack for traveling full-time, so you can check that out after this one. My main tip for packing light is be unattached of your stuff, because if you're traveling full-time or for a long period of time, you most likely will need different clothes for different seasons. So you will need to exchange things inside your luggage for that purpose. But it is very possible. And packing light will not only save you money in luggage costs when you fly or even when you take trains or buses, but it will also save you from the nightmare of the airline losing your luggage or having your luggage put in a different plane and receiving it a day after your arrival. So always make sure to just pack the essentials, clothes that you can use on different settings, and remember that in many places there are things you can buy instead of bringing them from home. And my final tip for traveling on a budget is basically flexibility, which is very necessary for traveling full-time or for anything in life really. As I told you, when you book cheap flights, there are some destinations that are cheaper during the week rather than in the weekends, so make sure to be flexible on your travel date. Remember that plans can change, so be open to that. And even though we're traveling on a budget, all the money you've saved is to enjoy it on experiences. So if there is a luxury thing you want to do or a particular experience that you may think is expensive, remember that we are here to enjoy ourselves. So just go for it. Remember that also traveling on a budget is exactly an adventure, and many of these tips actually help you connect with the locals of the area, which is very good when you're traveling. And those are all my tips. Make sure to share in the comments any other tip you may have to travel on a budget for this community. And that's all for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything, and to give me a thumbs up if you like these tips. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you all on the next trip.